People say, no, you should run an experiment until you hit the sample size. Sometimes you don't have to. Perfect example of that when elections are happening. Sometimes you can call a winner before you finish everybody who votes. Not everybody knows how to do it. There's statistics around it. The same with customer journey maps.
Let's focus on the topic of the day, customer journey maps. We have about 3 to 4 questions here. Are you ready?
You just fire away and we'll see.
So the first one is, how do you approach customer journey mapping for businesses with multiple touch points and channels such as social media, email marketing, and mobile apps?
Before I even approach or touch customer journey maps, I really want to ask the question, how are we going to be using the customer journey maps? You cannot imagine the number of companies who hire us. And at some point they'll tell us, oh, we have a customer journey map. We've hired XYZ agency that specializes in customer journey maps. And here's what they produce. As a matter of fact, we've worked with one of the top 10 sites. And they had just finished an engagement. It was $250,000 for about 3 months. They hired an amazing company that does customer journey maps. And they had hired them, I think about a year or a couple of years before. And they said, hey, we've hired them. They produced the customer journey maps. And I'm like, perfect. Can you just forward to us the customer journey maps? And then we'll have meetings to discuss what they've produced. 2 weeks later, we still didn't get the files. And I'm like, where are the files? You guys have invested a lot in this. And they're like, we can't find them. I'm like, what do you mean you can't find them? They're like, well, the guy who hired them is no longer with us. No one ever saved the customer journey maps. So we actually had to contact that company that did the customer journey maps and say, hey, remember that project that you did 2 years ago? Can you just send us kind of the final deliverables? What this tells me is that they paid a ton of money, they've hired the right company to do the customer journey maps, but they never actually use them, which translates into just an absolute waste. Ask the question, what are we going to use the customer journey maps for? I think customer journey maps are very powerful if you know how to use them. If it's just an exercise because you have the budget, just don't. You can probably use the money in different ways. To me, I can conduct customer journey maps by doing a lot of research. Now, in a typical conversion rate optimization project, we do anywhere between 5 to 7 interviews, trying to pick different people who have hired the company or the product to fulfill a need in their lives. When we're doing a customer journey map, we expand that pool. So we might be interviewing anywhere between 15 to 30 people because it's a very focused project to understand the decision process, all the different touch points that they've gone through to see how they actually came to the final decision. That's number one. Number two, we look at analytics, try and really decipher through analytics how people navigate around the website. You need to build some sort of a data model to look at new users, where they're coming from, returning visitors, what are the different channels that they're using. Now, analytics is very powerful. And the theory there is because it's online, we can really track that visitor journey. We cannot. Attribution models are still too elementary and everybody tries to take credit for that final conversion, correct? Oh, well, we brought them through this channel. Well, yeah, you did. The actual conversion happened when they came through this last channel. But guess what? They've had 7 or 8 different visits before they actually made that decision to convert. One of the things that we do in FigPy, since we do session recording, is we'll say, let's pull up session recording for returning visitors and let's see how many times they've converted. So I was looking at one of the companies that we work with. They have about 500,000 visitors that are coming to the site every month. We said, okay, let's just look at the returning visitors. That was about 40%, about 30% of their visitors. So we're from 500,000, we dropped to 150,000. And then we said, of those returning visitors, how many actually placed an order? The number drops drastically because now we're looking at probably like 15,000. I'm like, okay, 15,000. So we started 500,000, 150, 15,000. The conversion rate for returning visitors is great. We're looking at sessions and we say, those are returning visitors. Let's see how many times they actually came before they converted. And it was fascinating because some of them have visited the website 6 times before they made that purchase decision. Now I can just see their interaction with the website and it's fascinating. First time they came to the collection page, viewed a couple of products, they came back to the collection page, they came through email, they came through Google search. It's a lot of data points, but you need somebody to sit there and look for trends within those data points. So I have done the customer interviews. I'm looking now at my data and then I need to merge them both. What is the first trigger when somebody recognizes that I have a problem? Where do they do the search? What are the different sites that they visit? What influences that purchase decision? Who are they talking to? And we get that from doing the customer interviews. You build that funnel that gives you a good idea. It's like, it takes them 6 weeks to make the decision after they recognize the pain point that they have. Sometimes it's a lot longer, correct? The longer that journey, the harder it is. We work with a company. They do curtains and blind installation. It's an expensive purchase. It's anywhere between 5 to 10,000. It's a lead generation type website. The sales cycle is about 4 to 6 months. The customer journey before they actually pull the trigger to do the initial contact. And even after the initial contact, there's lots of offline activity that has to happen. It's a lot different than somebody recognizing, oh, I am out of batteries. I need to go somewhere and place an order of batteries. Or, oh, I need to buy a new battery for my laptop because my laptop is weak. They recognize the pain. They are doing a little bit of research. And you might find out that, oh, well, they want to figure out whether they do it themselves or they need to find somebody who's going to install the battery for them. Those are all valid questions. You need to bring them all together. Think about how people break down between those different segments. The final thing that I would say is you have people who converted. Having conversations with them is very powerful, and segmenting their data and trying to understand what's where the motivators to make the decision, the influencers. That helps you build a full customer journey.
That makes a lot of sense. Just to kind of like recap what you're saying, you say that like there are two approaches that you use when it comes to mapping customer journey. The first one, you do like interviews, right? And then you also do look at like the analytics just to see the different touch points that customers might have. So in selecting the people or the customers to interview, do you pick them based on the channels, or there's kind of like a criteria that you use to pick the customers to interview?
So what we do usually is first we're doing those interviews for people who converted. We say, okay, give us everybody who converted. Okay, so we have 10,000 conversions the last month, or maybe we have 100 conversions last month. Great, it doesn't matter to me. Then we say, what are the different demographics that we can pull for those who converted? What is some of the information that we have before we even reach out to them? Because I might have converted on a website, but I don't really remember how I found the website in the first place. And it's fascinating, especially if you're dealing with e-commerce where people come in and out. And I'm like, oh, maybe it was a Google search. Maybe I clicked on a link on Facebook. People do not necessarily remember. So trying to use the data that you have before even reaching out to people and creating the segments. You know what? Based on the data that we have, we think here's a segment of people that came through paid social. Here's a segment of people who came organically, at least in their last touch, correct? Here are people who just directly typed in our website and they came through. So we try and create some sort of criteria. We look at also demographics, younger, older, kind of like, okay, we're aiming for people who are 22 to 30 maybe, and 31 to 40. And then we're looking for males and females. We're looking at people living in different cities. Really, initially, with our research, we try and go with a blanket approach, correct? At least in the first 10 interviews. Let's just see what data points we have. After I do my initial 8 to 10 interviews, I might come back to the drawing board and say, okay, you know what? There are some trends there of segments that we see. We can drill a bit deeper, we can expand the reach, or, based on the data that you have, you'll have to make the next decision about the next 10 interviews. And then after you finish the next 10 interviews, you might expand again for the next 10 interviews. So that's kind of how the process is. It is not set solid, but you keep your eye on the different criteria that you have. And the interviews that you are conducting really help guide you to say, we need to expand here. We need to pull back. You might conduct 10 interviews and you say, of those 10, 8 people are sharing kind of the same journey. That's not good. How do we expand? Let's go back to our initial selection criteria and how do we fix that? Because something happened there that really is giving us kind of the same person. We work with a company, sells coffee, and we did the initial interviews for them. And it's fascinating because 9 out of the 10 interviews, they all came from the same channel. Then we said, okay, everybody's coming from the same channel. Can we expand? We looked at it. We tried to expand the channels. We're like, hey, how can we find people who don't come through that channel? It turns out that in that case, in particular, everybody came because they following a particular influencer, and they either follow that influencer or they know somebody who follows that influencer. And that's the way it worked. Very unique situation. Worked with another company that does skincare for men. Again, it was an influencer. Everybody was watching his videos. He's recommending the product. Everybody's coming and buying them. I remember talking to that influencer and he says, yeah, I record a YouTube video. I know the day I release it, that is about $100,000 in sales for me. So he does anywhere from 4 to 10 different YouTube drops, videos that are very specific to his product. He generates just by doing those videos that are anywhere between 5 to 15 minutes, he will generate probably $1 million or $1.5 million in sales. But because of course people look at that and say, oh, I can do that. Well, no, he spent years building the audience and the people who follow him.
It's easy to understand as you're explaining, but to kind of like apply it or implement what you're saying, it's so complicated. So how do you kind of like ensure the accuracy of customer journey mapping in the complex and ever evolving landscape of e-commerce?
I wish that there is a checklist. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Yeah, there are general guidelines, correct? That's the thing. Sometimes people ask me about A/B testing, conversion optimization. I tell them we share our process. I mean, I get every week with Simba, LinkedIn Live, and we'll answer whatever questions. And and then we share on the blog and we give away every little detail. To sometimes I feel it's painful. I'm like, oh, are we sharing too much? I'm like, no, it's fine. Sometimes we've looked at our Trello boards, correct? And here's how we run a project. It's almost like me, since Ayat is traveling, I have to do some cooking for the kids. And I look at these recipes online and I look at those YouTube videos and they make them look so easy until I get in the kitchen and I try and do it. And I'm like, God dang it. The rice does not look like the rice that they showed in the video. And the meat looks a little bit different. We cannot put a dollar value on the actual experience. There are specific situations that by experience, you know how to handle. You just put general guidelines and then you have to do it. And you have to do it once or twice and 3 times. And it's like, oh, I've learned from this mistake. I've learned from that mistake. I do a weekly internal CRO training for our team. And I tell them, like, every week, bring me your questions. One of our senior CROs, he's like, Khaled, can we talk about sample size calculation? It's funny, sample size calculation, most people think, it's like, oh, there's calculators out there. You calculate the sample size for an A/B test and you're done. I'm like, oh, I wish it's that easy. There's a lot of thought that goes into it, especially if you're going to be doing some data segmentation. Sometimes we call tests early. Sometimes we drop variations in the middle of a test. Now, I'm probably going to give him about 80% of the rules that are in my head and Ayat's head. And other CRO members are going to jump in and they say, oh, here's what we do. But it really is different from one experiment to the next. You have general rules, but you need to have an eye on the experiment, what you are trying to accomplish. You apply the general rule, and then sometimes you make a call. People say, no, you should run an experiment until you hit the sample size. Sometimes you don't have to. Perfect example of that when elections are happening, correct? Sometimes you can call a winner early before you finish everybody who votes. Just look at the data and you can call a winner early. Not everybody knows how to do it. There's statistics around it to make that decision. So you can't just say, well, yeah, I'm going to call it early at 60% of the sample size. Maybe yes, maybe no. There's some statistics that you need to apply. Again, the same with customer journey maps. We talk about the steps, but unless you do hands-on, okay, I'm going to run through the process and I'm going to learn from it. Sometimes I bring in somebody external. So you know what? You have experience in doing this, guide our team. I don't need you to implement it. Sometimes I'll tell them, hey, our team members are going to watch you. But sometimes I will tell them, hey, can you guide our team through the process? Give them advice. I want weekly calls where you kind of direct the team. Because ultimately, if I do an exercise 20 times, I'll figure out the ins and the outs and I'm not making mistakes. But sometimes I'd rather spend money and get things done correctly right away. What are some of the pitfalls when creating customer journey maps? So it's fascinating that sometimes when people want to create a customer journey map, they think they want to get to 100% accuracy. And they go above and beyond to get to 100% accuracy. In their nature, customer journey maps are not going to be accurate. We are looking for general trends where 80, 85, maybe if we're lucky, 90% of our visitors go through on their journey to make a purchase. That's it. Trying to get oh, I need it to be 100% accurate. No, because every customer is different. They have their own unique circumstances. Now you can generalize, correct? And the more you generalize, the more you say, you know what? Yeah, they fall in this bucket and that bucket. And that's really what, to me, customer journey mapping is all about creating different buckets of first events, things that trigger somebody to say, you know what, I'm going to start the research. What are the different criteria that they are selecting? Second events where they say, you know what, I need to make a decision today. And then going through the process of actually placing an order. That really is perhaps one of the most important things as you're creating a customer journey. It's not a perfect process. Number 2 is trying to do customer journey maps with a very small sample size. That's a little scary, correct? I'm not going to build a customer journey map based on interviews with 3-4 people. I need to expand that. And then the other extreme is trying to build a customer journey map by trying to make it a large project and I'm going to interview 200, 300 people. There is a right balance. To me, it's 20 to 30 people. If I have a specific project to figure out my customer journey maps, I'm not going to do 4 or 5 people. people. I'm not going to do 300, 400 people. Then the final thing is actually making sure that you'll use the customer journey map in your marketing. If it's just merely here, it's another document we produced, it's a check mark that I've done because somebody had asked for it and no one's going to look at it again, don't do that. It's just like personas, correct? Most companies have personas. Most companies don't use personas. It's just an exercise. I'm like, oh, it looks nice. Every company you talk to, like, every e-commerce company has a Jean who is 42, who is kind of like, the stay-at-home mom. And I'm like, okay, can we just move beyond the Jean that everybody has? Make sure that you have a real use for your customer journey. Make sure that you come back to it regularly, that it influences the marketing that you do. Now, marketing is ever evolving. Channels are ever changing. If I create customer journey maps and I'm using them regularly, it might be an exercise that I do every couple of years. Maybe it's an exercise that I do regularly because things have changed, the positioning have changed, the economy has changed. So as consumers change, we have to update our customer journey maps and then think about, okay, what are the decisions that we are making based on those updated customer journey maps?
Yeah, so I think maybe it also touches on the follow-up question that I was going to ask you. How often should you do customer journey mapping?
Every time somebody tells me, especially if they've done a customer journey map before and they say, hey, we want to update it, we want to go back to it. My first question to them, show me how often you used the existing customer journey maps in the last 6 to 12 months. Past performance is a good indicator of future behavior. If you haven't used it in the past, save your money. I'm not saying it's not important. It's very important. But if it's just, again, something that you do and you just move on, just don't do it. Save your money, like the amount of money and effort and time and thinking that it requires a company to come up with a customer journey map is not simple. It's a major activity. And if it's used correctly, it will have an amazing impact on your bottom line. But if it's just a checkpoint, you probably can use that budget towards something else.
I think those are the questions that I had for you about customer journey maps.
Well, until next time, thank you everybody for watching, commenting, and happy A/B testing.